Welcome back to another episode of Emotional Nightmares. I am your host. My name is Tyler. As you can see, we are still in Butler at the 831 Club down here, Sober Club, that you can feel free to pop in at any time. Ultimately, like I said, we're going to try to take this show on the road a little bit and hear other people's perspective, their perceptions and their stories, their experience, strength, and hope, how they got sober, how they stay sober, or even mental health issues, how we deal with that. On today's episode, we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Sara. She is going to share with us her experience, her strength, and her hope on how she got sober. So with that, I'm going to shut up. And Sara, go ahead and
all right.
Introduce yourself, do your thing.
All right. Thanks, Tyler. My name is Sara R. I'm an addict. I am coming up on 8 years. January the 1st is my clean date. And I've always kind of shared that on New Year's Eve, I was not in a fancy dress at a nice party. I was headed to detox to a, locally not a popular place to go to detox. It was extremely painful, physically, mentally, emotionally. The very first time I had ever had any attempt of getting clean, getting sober. I was 35 years old, and it was introduced to me at my final rock bottom, which wasn't even my worst rock bottom. It just happened to be my last one. I guess what led up to that, I've been using for 22 years, and I started using when I was 14. And I think about that time, and I've been thinking about a lot recently, reminiscing about a lot of memories, and maybe memories that I should have been a part of, memories that people were probably very relieved that I wasn't a part of, and how many moments that I missed with my family and my so-called friends at the time. And I always said that I was an addict. It didn't mean that I didn't love you. It just meant that I didn't love myself, and I didn't know what that looked like. And for many years, it was a lot of fun, and that was just my way of life, a way to, connect with people, was at a party. And I'm a small-town girl from West Virginia. We like to ride four-wheelers, shoot guns, and go to church on Sunday, and there was a lot of, a family-like atmosphere, immediate family, my best friends who I considered like family, and we all grew up together, and our parents grew up together, our grandparents grew up together. I'm from a very small town where basically also everybody knows everybody, and everybody waved to everybody on the street, but they just didn't wave to me. For a long time, I carried the weight of living two separate lives. The life on the outside was somebody that had two jobs all the time, very active attempts at working, with the youth group in the church, attempts at being a part of like nonprofits and 4-H clubs, and really trying hard to maintain an image that I would be proud of. And then the other side was maintaining an addiction that was slowly spiraling out of control. I had many peaks of great success, and then I would self-sabotage those as quickly as they came. For an example, in 2001, I was nominated for the Helen Hayes Award in Washington, D.C. for Best Breakthrough Actress. And that was really meaningful to me. But quietly on the side, I was battling alcohol and substance use disorder, and I didn't even know that I should have had a diagnosis at the time. I just didn't. It was, again, a way of life, and I worked really hard to maintain two lives at the same time. My first arrest came in 2005. I was in my early 20s. Everything kind of felt surreal at the time. I was doing everything that I needed to do to get the next one. And at the sacrifice of my physical self, my emotional self, and anybody that got in my way. I am the scariest person that I've ever met when I'm using. I do not truly care about the well-being of others when I'm using. And that is a really scary place to be in. Manipulations, lies, physical, mental abuse against people, with people. And I, deep down, I knew that I was a really good person. I'm sweet, I'm funny, I was a chameleon. Anything that you wanted me to be, I would be. And when I got arrested in 2005, the first of 17 mugshots, the glass shattered to an extent. It didn't stop me from using. Not the court hearings, not showing up in my court clothes, the fanciest clothes that I could get from the thrift store. I really attempted to maintain an image of perfection. And then I was battling, again, a spiraling out of control addiction. I have 17 mugshots. Again, I've earned every single one of those, but I still pointed fingers at the same time to anybody that I thought, was a part of or was against me, or it's not fair, you were there too, but I just kept getting caught. And it still wasn't enough for me to stop using, but I feel that deep down inside of me, I always had the desire. I had those moments of clarity and spiritual awakeness at different times. A death in the family, an exciting event, a friend's wedding, and I felt like if I could just stay clean, I know that I could be the person that I am truly on the inside. I just didn't know how to wade through all that. So in 2016, something really tragic happened. My cousin got killed in a car accident. And I guess you could say things like that happen every day. But when it happened to my family, watching somebody bury a child, my cousin was like a brother to me. And to lose somebody unexpectedly with a family and children at a young age, it was all still fun and games. And then he was dead. And again, I still didn't stop using. It just progressively got worse. That traumatic incident took me to a really dark place where I actually used that as an excuse for people to, empathize and feel sorry for me. And it was a manipulation tactic. And I'm ashamed to say that still today, but I've worked on forgiving myself for that. So I was employed at the hospital as a CNA, and I had been, amongst other things, stealing medications from patients, trying to get by with it, coming to work under the influence, really didn't think that anybody knew, and that's a lie. Everybody knew, and I really tried to maintain that. Around Thanksgiving of that year, I had made a decision that I was going to kill myself, and I believed the inner voice, that inner dialogue in my heart and in my mind, that I was just a burden. I was better off not here. I was better off dead, and I would be actually doing people a favor if I just wasn't around. I'd never really been a desirable person. People truly, I think, felt ashamed of having me around them, in their house, in their home, introducing me to people, because once they heard my name, they knew about my 17 mugshots, my multiple arrests, my battle with drug addiction. I was married at the time. I was the sick wife. And, he was the loan officer at the bank. He was, the insurance broker, his family, the silver spoon, and I was just what I felt at the time, that I was the disease in a living form. I made the decision to kill myself by purposefully overdosing. At the time, I really, truly didn't even know what that meant. I just knew I was going to use enough to go out. And I had my scrubs on, had my name tag on, and was on my way to work when I made this brilliant decision. And I get to work, and I go out in the lobby of the bathroom during state surveyor week. And that's just an audit in a hospital, and most businesses, most places in the healthcare system, almost anywhere, they have an audit, by the state that comes in and, keeps a pulse on the system, right? And there I was in the bathroom, and I was found by a state surveyor. I don't remember much. I remember waking up in the ER of the hospital that I worked at, full of guilt and shame, remorse, embarrassment. I was angry because my plan didn't work, and I became violently physically ill in the hospital. And this nurse was like, "I think you need to work on your coping skills." And that was like alphabet soup to me. I didn't know what he meant. So the hospital gave me an option. Basically, if I asked for help, they would help me, that they would help me go to treatment. Now, I've been using for 22 years. I didn't know what any of that looked like. Where I'm from, rehab is a myth. If you go to treatment, you're a loser, you're a quitter. And for a great deal of my life, it's just who I was. I was the party girl, the keg stand queen of Calhoun County. And I prided myself on those titles and those labels. And I was tired, and I was exhausted. And I just didn't have anything else left in me. I didn't have a home life that I considered something to be proud of internally at the time. Big, beautiful house, really nice car, spiritually bankrupt. And I think my feelings of worthlessness had come from so many years of disappearing under the guise of addiction. I had no idea who I was without a drug or a drink inside of me. And the thought of that was terrifying. So I had a private insurance policy at the time, which kind of opened the gates up to different options for treatment. And I did what any good addict would do. I went online and I Googled 5-star luxury treatments, because if I was going to go to rehab, it was going to be a really nice one, and I wanted to be, maybe feeling something luxurious for the first time. I'm from the trailer in the country with no air conditioning. Using the water hose during the summertime was a privilege. Using the spigot at Grandma's house in the summertime, that was a privilege. And I loved my life. It's just how I grew up. So I thought if I was actually going to leave that town and go and do something, I was going to do it my way. And they sent me to detox, and I was making wild demands in detox, clapping my sandals at a nurse for more medications, and I was pulling my hair physically out, and there was a physical pain that I had never felt before. And it was my body withdrawing. But it's almost like a spiritual change was also happening, because I've never had a spiritual awakening that wasn't a result of something painful. And so they took me to the treatment center 3 days after detox, because I think that they were going to end up kicking me out because of my behaviors. And I guess I was that girl that, was the troublemaker, the difficult one, she's not going to make it. But I really, truly had a desire. I really, truly had the desire to change my life, and I was terrified. And I think about that fear. And I'd said that I'd been reminiscing lately about all the memories and all of the events, of my friend's life that I had missed, because I was really busy doing what I needed to do to get the next one. I'd end up in places that I never should have been in. There was always a sick feeling of guilt and remorse when I was around people that were not spiritually fit, maybe lacked a lot of moral integrity and didn't care about other people's lives, and treated people really horribly and harmed themselves and harmed other people in front of me, but I didn't care because I was getting what I needed. And I've been in those places where my heart and my spirit's you do not have any business being here. But I'd stay there, and I would stay there until the drugs were gone. And I felt this innate desire that I was like this attribute there, right? That like I'm in this really like horrific place, but at least I was there and I can make people laugh and smile and I'm really pretty. So, you know, my presence was needed. And I'd almost died a couple times, you know, in people's vehicles and, you know, again, just really dangerous situations. You know, guys playing with guns and, you know, doing a lot of drugs that, you know, were really, really dangerous, but I was right there with them. So I wasn't any better. But I had this mentality of, you know, egomaniac with that inferiority complex that they talk about in the literature. And, you know, when I made it to detox, when I made it to treatment, and then I went to sober living, I took a suggestion. You know, I listened to what people were telling me because deep down in my heart, like I desired to be clean, and I wanted that for myself. But I had to hurt a lot of people in order to save my own life. So I went to sober living, and a few months after I was there, I got a really bright idea, like any addict does. There's a soap opera that happens in our head, and we have the desire to sometimes just like play it out and see what happens. And I was still married at the time, and I decided to go home, back to West Virginia, to make it work. Going back to the same environment that broke me, expecting it to fix me. And I did that, and it broke me all over again. I laid on a couch for 10 days with like no support, no meetings, because in sober living and in treatment, you're going to meetings, you build a support group, and all these beautiful things that already happened to me six months into my recovery, and I abandoned it all and went back home. And watching family members still in active addiction, you know, trying to read the Just for Today to somebody that is getting high, like they don't really care about those readings or hearing from me about the things I was excited about. I thought, you know, showing off my shiny new recovery would, you know, help people. I was going to save every addict in West Virginia one at a time, and that was a lie that I told myself. So I share this often in my story that the day came that I decided to save my own life. And that day was in October of 2017, 10 months clean. My husband at the time, his father had a stroke, and everybody loaded up to go to the hospital. And, you know, they looked at me like, you're coming too, right? And I said, no. Today I'm packing everything I own in my Jeep, and I'm going back north. I'm going back to Butler. I formed a foundation, and I'm going back. I had no plan, no place to stay. I had a few friends because, again, I moved out of the sober living house, and I didn't desire to go back there. And I just knew I needed to get out of the situation I was in. And I packed everything in my vehicle, and I never looked back. And I cried the whole way, and I was like vaping uncontrollably and listening to every sad song on the radio and just in all of those emotions. And it was such a powerful time, and I had a spiritual awakening through that. I may not have known it at the time, but I saved my own life that day. Because at the same time I was struggling a lot with my mental health. I was cutting and burning myself, and I wasn't even using, and I'd never even done that before, but I didn't know how to give myself emotional relief from the pain that I had caused myself. So in our reading, when it says, in fact, you know, we create our own problems, and we struggle to take responsibility for it, like that's where I was. But I was ready to take responsibility, and it was the scariest time in my whole life. So I got a roommate, and I got a job, and I got a divorce, and I did all of the things that nobody thought that I could do. And my whole life I had always felt so misunderstood, so just dismissed. I struggled from severe insignificance. I was never popular in school. I was never invited, you know, to homecoming dance. Guys didn't like look at me, you know, than anything more than a piece of ass, you know, and I hate saying that. I didn't want to cuss, but I just know in my heart that I was not that person. and I just wanted to see what I was made of. I was in my late 30s, and it was just a new lease on life that recovery had given me. So, I'm living my best life, and I decided to start taking major suggestions that were given to me. I do practice the program of Narcotics Anonymous, and I have, been a part of AA and NA, Refuge Recovery, many different pathways, and I found a home in NA. And all that really means for me is, getting a sponsor, working the steps, getting some service commitments, but it really truly meant changing everything for me. People, places, things. But I changed my mind about who I was. And that was the biggest change that I made for myself in a long time. I stopped believing that I was this horrible person that needed to die. I started looking at myself in a new light and started figuring out what kind of music I liked, what kind of food I actually did like. And turns out I'm not really big into country music, even though I'm from West Virginia. I actually really like heavy metal and a lot of other stuff, But I did start defining who I was. And those young adult years that I had lost and those memories that I didn't make, I decided to build a life today that I don't have to run and hide from. And I'm surrounded by a circle of women today that have lifted me up so greatly and have helped me survive, but helped me thrive and have inspired me so much to continue on this path. So, being in recovery for me has not, I hear people share, I'm going to try this recovery thing. I'm going to go to a couple meetings and see what happens. Recovery isn't a hobby. It was never a side dish for me. It's the entree. It's the whole thing. It's the full deal. And I practiced, half measures. And I found that if I only went to meetings and meeting makers make it, that's all that I was doing. Extending myself into the full process of the 12 steps just for me has allowed me to become aware of my own bullshit. It's allowed me to become aware of my vicious cycles of insanity, my vicious patterns of self-destruction and self-sabotage. And I truly believe today that I have a life that I built, that I don't need to run from, but I want what I have. And I desire for any addict just to love themselves and to know that if you feel significantly unimportant, if you feel that you don't matter and that nobody sees you, I promise you that I do, at least if I'm around you or in your circle, but I'll answer my phone if somebody calls. And I was taught that. I had a child during COVID, and becoming a mother in recovery has been something I never imagined myself having a family. Even though I was married, I didn't desire a family at the time. It was going to get in my way. And I have a career today where I am financially very confident. I definitely don't need anybody to take care of me financially today. And it's a really, really good feeling. And I get to help people. To be in a role for a company that I love so much has really, inspired me to continue to help people. And I'm a chairperson on the local recovery center. That is so meaningful to me. I think it's really difficult to watch people not live up and work up to their full potential when I see their capabilities and then they get in their own way. They take 2 steps back in their recovery, but I did the same thing when I first got clean. My recovery's been anything but comfortable. And when they tell you to change everything, I listened, not really on purpose. I heeded the advice, and hindsight's 20/20. I look back and I think, how did I get through that? How did I purposefully walk away from everything and everyone that I'm comfortable and that I love and who I love? I left my dogs behind, and I really found that self-love and loving who I continue to grow into has been the most beautiful gift of my recovery. And when I say I'm the scariest person I've ever met when I'm using, I still believe that to this day, and that keeps me in check really fast. I know what I'm capable of. And having almost 8 years clean, I feel like I'm just getting started and that there's so much left to learn, and the blessings continue to flow in my life, and I really, truly, keep it simple today. I have a cow print robe and oatmeal pies and Netflix and my kid, and I'm just really happy. For any addict that's listening that feels alone and you feel like you can't do it or that it's too late, it's just not. It is a lie that the disease of addiction wants you to believe. And I have one shot at this. I got clean one time 8 years ago, and I'm blessed to have, the one time run so far. And just for today, again, I practice spiritual principles the best of my ability, but humility and honesty are at the core of my program. So I kind of feel like I'm rambling right now, and I could talk about myself for hours, of course, but thank you so much, Tyler. That's all I have.
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
I mean, you covered a lot, right? Yeah, man, I don't know, man. That's fantastic. I'm very proud of you. I thank you very much for coming on. You're kind of really short.
Was I?
Yeah, it's only 26 minutes.
Really?
You got plenty of time.
Do I?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you care if I ramble a little bit more? I didn't want to be boring anybody,
No,
but
you got some time.
all right. Well, thank you. Okay, I appreciate that.
So I mean, how? Let's talk about this, right? So because you talk about in your story, so you went through 17 different arrests.
Yeah.
So obviously the 18th time was that time, right?
Yeah.
But what is so it's not the one time, right? You
Right.
got technically 18 in before you finally got on this pathway. But what's that thing, right? Because right now you're still pushing forward, right?
Yeah.
So what's that one thing that is clicked in your head that's I gotta do this because I don't want this
To go back, yeah. So,
what keeps you going?
That's a really good question. I remember being in jail for the very first time, and I think any young female that gets arrested for a first time, it's the most dramatic, emotional experience. But I really felt this isn't who I am. I am not this person that is supposed to be in jail. I actually envisioned my 20s as being in a hippie van, traveling across the country, going to all these concerts, and doing all these incredible things, and young and vibrant and adventurous, and that's who I was. That's who I am. And that arrest, the first one was really, and I don't want to say traumatic, because I think people can loosely use that term traumatic. But, the dogs came in, the guns, the officers, the, police vehicles roll up in my house, and I weighed 88 pounds at the time of my first arrest.
Well, that is kind of traumatic.
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty traumatic.
I mean, that's not a loose term. That.
I shouldn't be so passive about it.
Yeah, don't downplay your trauma, right? That's traumatic.
It is traumatic.
Anybody who's living in the farm world.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you're getting hammered with dogs and guns and cops.
The laser beams that they have on their guns, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think maybe today I can be dismissive of that, because it's been almost 20 years ago when that happened, which is still a shock to me. And I was such a baby, early 20s. I'm 43 now, so I think about it. It has been almost 20 years. But it's almost like my life flashed before my eyes. The world came crashing all the way down on me at that point, and the glass shattered. Everything that I thought I was, I wasn't. And at that moment specifically, when I was taken to jail, I can't believe I'm thinking of this, too. I almost forgot. So I'm sitting in the jail cell that night. You know, handcuffed, 88 pounds. And where I'm from, it's straight up like Mayberry. It's like the little county, little jail office. You know, they have like 2 little jail cells in the back before they take you off to the regional. And I was with 2 of my friends at the time, and I look over, the door kicks open at 2 a.m. to the jail house, to the courthouse, and it was my dad. So, because of my actions, because of the undercover agent that I had worked with, and I take responsibility for that, I sent him to my dad's house to get something that I didn't have and that I knew my dad had. And I'm just trying to, like, not, you know, I mean, I can be as brutally honest as you'd like me to be, but I'm just trying to be mindful about my terminologies, you know, what words I use for
We're not unedited channel. You can say whatever you want to say.
Well, you know, I was...
Within reason.
I'm not trying to go off the deep end.
Statute and limitations, but other than that,
I was selling hard drugs at the time, and my dad had, you know, some weed and some shrooms that were given to him to sell, and the weed was his, and, you know, it was like, we were like nickel and dime our buddies, you know, it was never like this huge, like, some people tell me these wild stories of how, like, they were these big time dealers and had all these connections and all these people. I mean, we really just kind of nickel and dimed our friends loosely, and I'd sent that guy out there to my dad's house to get a bag of weed, and I told my dad that he was cool, because at the time, you know, he was, because he had money, and the first thing I saw walk in was a 6-foot bong that I knew was from my dad's house, and I was like, wait a minute, that's the 6-footer, like, that was like our party bong. Why is that coming in the door? And then I saw my father. And my dad is, you know, like my hero. My mom left when I was very young. She did take off and move to Vegas with her new husband. And my dad ultimately raised me and my brother. And I love my dad. He is the hardest working man I've ever known. Never bothered anybody. And there he stood in the middle of the night in handcuffs. And I immediately was crushed. And the way he looked at me, like, when you know you're in trouble with mom and dad is one look, but getting your parent arrested is a whole entire different look. And so we all went to jail together. And my grandfather had bailed me out. And I went to my grandparents' house. It was like a day and a half later. And then somehow my dad got bailed out, but he had to ride back to my grandmother's house with my mother, which would have been his ex-wife, because they lived in West Virginia at the time. And it was just, the whole situation was mortifying. And that question of, like, what keeps me going, and what keeps me going from back, like, to back there, is that every time I get a mugshot, they'd say, you're back at it again, here she is, you know, it was just like that vicious cycle of insanity. And the last time I went to jail, I was on probation, got a DUI, and my PO, I was like, well, I was honest about it, and then I had asked for permission to go to the beach, and she was like, you know, don't do anything I wouldn't do. And I was like, she would go to the beach. You know, that's how I justified it. So I left the state, and I got a DUI on probation, and I went into her office for my monthly PO check. And I was all dressed up for work and everything, and she was like, you're not going to work today. I was like, really? She's like, no, you're going to jail. And at that point, and I want to share this, I'd been arrested in 2005. They carried over my my sentence, my case, until the month before the statute of limitations went up on it in 2008. So I got continuances for 3 years. Then they put me on probation for another 3 years. So this one arrest for selling, and I don't downplay that at all, it literally took 6 years to come like full circle. I got arrested in 2005, and I got my home confinement bracelet cut off in September of 2011 because I got my home confinement bracelet cut off on a Thursday. I got married on a Sunday because I said, I'm not walking down the aisle with a bracelet on my ankle because of course, people are like, oh, nobody cares, but I actually cared at the time. You know, it's the mortification of being arrested, being behind 4 walls and not making my own choices, wanting to set an example for my child, but I created this life for myself. I built a life for myself that I am proud of. And to throw it all away, the way that I had just tossed so many opportunities away in my past, and I just don't desire that anymore. My desires are so much deeper and so much more important to me today that between my family and my friends, but, you know, having this career that I'm so proud of, I'm a business development representative, which, you know, some people kind of look down on or have different opinions of, but my role is very special to me. I do work for the rehab that saved my life. And I am incredibly proud to be a part still of that family for 5 years. And they trust me to talk about them in the public. I get to work with social workers, case managers, like all these really exciting things, but I still get to help people. And I know that's something I'm really passionate about and good at. And so my hometown a couple years ago, in September, which is Recovery Month, they were hosting their very first annual ever recovery event. And if something like that would have been around when I was getting clean, events, you know, meetings, sober livings, maybe my story would be a little bit different. But they invited me to be the very first speaker at my hometown's ever first, like, recovery event. And that day that I shared, the prosecutor and the judge that were assigned to my case for so many years and had watched me literally self-destruct in the community, they were there that day. And they were so proud of me. But there's still like a feeling of guilt and shame I think that I might always have. But having like pride and, you know, enjoyment out of being a part of that. But still, I think that family can be like the hardest thing though. Because sometimes people in my family, I don't think they're ever going to see me as anything but like who I used to be. Maybe they don't like the fact that I got a divorce from my husband, you know. Maybe they didn't like the fact that I up and left my entire, you know, hometown, my entire community, and I started over for myself. And I've been called selfish. I've been called greedy by my own family. I have, in the past year, I was talking to a few people before we got started tonight. You know, in the past year, I've had some significant weight loss. And, you know, when I said I got arrested and I weighed 88 pounds, when I got clean, however, I put on some really healthy weight. But 8 years later, I had some health problems, and last year I was pushing almost 180 pounds. And I pray to God that maybe somebody needs to hear this, because I really struggle sharing about it. But I got really sick, and I got a gallbladder surgery. I got it removed, and I had really struggled with, you know, an autoimmune disorder that came out of remission. I was on some medications that caused me significant weight loss. But I can happily say today that I'm the happiest and healthiest that I have ever been in my physical life, and I'm 43 years old, and you have to be in shape to chase a 4-year-old around, because he is an entire huge ball of amazing energy. But I think people struggle with complimenting other people, on weight loss, or maybe they don't know how to talk to people as they're gaining weight when they get clean. And maybe it doesn't sound like as serious as a topic of, relapse and overdose, which are, eternally so impactful and huge conversations. But I've had some pretty horrible comments said to me because I lost weight, and I really kind of struggle with that. So I'm healthy and I'm happy, and I know that, and I think that I have to let people think whatever they want of me. But my family has said, well, if you lose weight, people are just going to think you're on drugs again. And that's just not true. I was really sick, and I made it through that whole situation clean, and I'm really proud of myself for that. My immediate circle of friends here, specifically in Butler, are pretty incredible. These women and men have supported me and loved me and shown me really, truly what friendship looks like, and being in any type of relationship is really hard. It has always been difficult for me to, stop talking long enough for people to, to listen to them and have true, heartfelt, meaningful conversations and relationships with people. Self-centeredness is at the core of my disease and in all of our diseases, and for so long it was just all about me, how everything affected me, and the impact that I had on people's life. I was always an attribute, never a detriment. And I'm just at a place in my life today where the people I have in my life are the people that I want in my life. And that is definitely something that is a huge motivation for me. When they call me and they reach out for help, for the most part, I can answer the phone. And I really, honestly, for the love that was shown to me in a recovery program, for the love that was given to me, the compassion, the forgiveness, when I shared out loud about what I had done and what I'd been through, and the way that I've been lifted up and supported has changed my life. And I know that I've shared a lot of things specifically here tonight that some people, it might be hard for them to hear. Even when I share about family, I love my family so, so much. And they're usually the first people to trigger me with anger or aggression. I think it's just because I love them so deeply. And now that I have a family of my own, and my brother lives up here and he's in recovery, I'm really proud of that. I'd always used with my brother, and to watch him, take a little bit of a different path, but he's clean and sober and he's happy and healthy. I'm really proud of that. So I think that, again, if anybody's listening tonight, find your motivation, find your reason, even if it's the littlest thing. And I think that there's always somebody that's going to be able to, that wants to be there for you. And when you reach out for help, be in the right circle of people where your desires are met, your needs are met by people that respect you and love you. And I feel like I'm rambling again, but no. Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's really important, to be around people that respect you and aren't afraid to hurt your feelings in order to motivate you. To be truly part of a circle of people that do not fear hurting your feelings, and a measure of honesty is just really vital for our recovery. It's been for mine, so.
I agree. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing your experience, your strength, your hope. So as always, you could have been anywhere in the world today, but you chose to sit here and be with us for these minutes.
Yeah.
I greatly appreciate you for tuning in. Hopefully you hear something that can help you stay sober just one more day, because at the end of the day, that's all we need. If you can just make it through today, tomorrow looks a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
If you did not hear something, I ask that you please call somebody in your support group, call somebody that won't co-sign your shit, and ask them for help. because help is out there if you want it. Don't call the dope man. That's all that's important.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you. Thank you for listening, and that's it.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you for watching.